My name is Katie Roth. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the executive director at Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. Very, very delighted to welcome you back to the second conversation in our series, Exploring Religion and Environment. So we're taking deep, short dives into different religious traditions, exploring how they might contain wisdoms for our shared learning and understanding. So today we're taking a dive into a very particular tradition, the Reconstructionist Jewish tradition, and I'm really, really excited to share the wisdoms from the three folks who are joining us today, all who are rabbis. Before I turn it over to Rabbi Nathan to share a little bit more, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our series co-sponsors, the Better Path Coalition, Delaware Interfaith Power and Light, and also Green Muslims who are helping us spread the word. So if you are joining us from those communities, thank you so much for being here and being part of this conversation that we're having together. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge today's sponsor for our conversation, which is Exploring Apocalypse. Exploring Apocalypse is chaplaincy for a world made less certain by climate change. Rooted in the original meaning of apocalypse, which is to uncover or to reveal, this is a dedicated space for you to explore your feelings around climate change so that you can respond meaningfully, even joyfully, to the challenges of our time. Exploring Apocalypse chaplaincy sessions are conducted over Zoom and are open to folks of all faiths, identities, and backgrounds. To learn more, you can visit the link which we will drop in the chat. And I'm very glad that the founder of Exploring Apocalypse is one of our speakers here today as well. Rabbi Ora, thank you so much for being here and being part of today's conversation. All right, with that, welcome. Thank you again for being here. And I am going to turn things over to Rabbi Nathan Martin.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me okay, right? Good. Well, I also want to just echo and add my welcome. Thank you all for coming and for being here. I know that there are many things demanding of our time at this moment, and including a major conflict in the Middle East that is, of course, demanding mine and many rabbis' time at the moment and others. But I really want to extend my gratitude for you making and carving out the time to what I would say is to hear this important important Torah from my colleagues. That's how I would characterize this, and that it is important to have these conversations and reflections on activism and accompaniment through the climate crisis from different religious perspectives. So just a piece of word of background on me, and then I'm going to introduce our first speaker. I am a rabbi in Philadelphia. I serve a Reconstructionist community there, affiliated with the Reconstructing Judaism movement. And I also serve on the board of Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. So I like that I get to wear multiple kippot in my work, and hope to continue to do that. What I've invited our speakers today is to each take some time to share, and then we are going to get some more time for interaction and Q&A after that. I first would like to invite Rabbi Fred to share. Rabbi Fred is serving now as the chair of the Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life. He's been a longtime rabbi at Adat Shalom Reconstructionist Congregation in Bethesda, Maryland. He has served on the National Board of Interfaith Power and Light, served as a chairperson of the Greater Washington, Maryland Interfaith Power and Light. So he very much knows us, our organization, and our people. Rabbi Fred, I will also just say, has been an important leading voice both in the Reconstructionist movement and beyond on how we organize ourselves as people of faith to do work in the world on environmental change and climate justice work. So grateful to have you, Rabbi Fred. I think we'll turn it to you first. We'll give you about 10 minutes, and then I'll introduce Rabbi Ora after that.
Golden. Thank you, Nathan and Katie and Ora. I'm going to kind of go broad, and Ora is going to go deep in an oversimplification. And I've got a bunch of slides to share. I just want to say, with props to this institution and to all of you for being part of this. I often teach that each of the words of interfaith and power and light, you could just kind of drosh or interpret those three words, and there's a whole teaching there. And right now, maybe more than ever, we need the interfaith piece. And the fact that we come together across lines of difference to celebrate the commonality and do the holy work together is more needed than ever. And it is happening in droves in institutions like PA IPL and National IPL and the alphabet soup of faith environment, because if there's anything that unites us, it's, as Pope Francis would call it, our common home. So thrilled to be with you. I make no assumptions about the background you all have. I just wanted to put 9 minutes of kind of greatest hits of Judaism and climate and environmental consciousness on the table. And it's going to go fast if I can even find, show all windows. It's coming. Here we go. All right. Hopefully you see the slides and nod, gesticulate wildly if so. Okay, and from the beginning. So a piece of art that I like to start with, Judy Chicago, the late feminist artist, Rainbow Shabbat. Take a look at the panoply of faces. The idea here is that ultimately the goal is universal, right? But we're using the particulars of a tradition to create a beautiful frame in which all traditions can gather. Love that piece, and it will come back again. So why does this matter? What is a Jewish angle, and how can others from other traditions perhaps find insight and meaning? So 10 super quick things. Number one, it's universal, it's timely and urgent. And we absolutely can't afford lasting mistakes. Beautiful, famous midrash that a commentary that God led the first human around the first ecosystem and said, look, isn't this great? It's for you, but take care lest you spoil and destroy my world. If you do so, no one comes after you to repair it. That's not like, Greta Thunberg, right? Or Greenpeace these days. This is over 1,000 years old. We have that consciousness. And that, of course, is what carries into the idea that there is no plan or planet B. The Hebrew here on the bottom, le'ovda u'leshomra, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, the only things that we're supposed to do, first people in first ecosystem, is to work or serve the land and or to guard it. Letting it get worse on our watch is not an option. And we have to channel a concept resonant in all our traditions, so beautifully articulated by Dr. King, building the beloved community, and we have no time to lose, the fierce urgency of now. Theologically, humility. The land is not ours. Stuff is not ours. It is God's, and therefore it needs to be shared fairly with all God's children. This Leviticus 25, Ki li haaretz, the land is mine. You, all of us, are just strangers and sojourners. If we could approach our tenure on this land, in many cases for this group, former Lenape land, importantly to note, then we begin to realize that ownership is a tenuous and fuzzy concept, and we need to bring theology back into that picture. Most famously, Psalm 24, also the core of the Latin American liberation theologians, Del Señor es la tierra, l'Adonai haaretz umloa. The earth is God's and the fullness thereof. Justice and equality, the human dimension. Classic teachings, love your neighbor as yourself. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. This, of course, comes directly into climate consciousness because we need to think about who is disproportionately impacted. And we know that it is the global South, it is BIPOC communities, which is precisely why the corollary of love thy neighbor is Black Lives Matter. Global South matters. This is, to me, just a good Jewish Torah. It's also broader Torah. This is our friends from the Friends Committee at love the Capitol Dome in the background, love thy neighbor, no exceptions. And the logic, we're all created in the divine image. And that means those on the front line, the fence line communities, and that includes the cancer corridor around Chester County and the southeast waterfront. It includes the rural folks who may not call themselves climate concerned, but are at the mercy of shifting geopolitical and economic trends. We need the entire state, we need all people to be recognized for being created in the divine image. Even faster, 4, conservation. We're not allowed to cut down an enemy's trees in wartime, says Deuteronomy 20. How much more so to set up economies in ways that are thoughtless and ultimately death dealing. So already in the Talmud, it says you have to use the best available technology and spend time knowing what you got in order to make it run as efficiently as possible. You do different things with lamps with different fuels. And it is a Jewish legal requirement to tune into this. I think of that as saying the halakha, the Jewish law, is that you must buy the best in class mileage vehicle, you must advocate for higher cafe standards, and you must walk, bike, or take public transit wherever you can. And that gets to the larger notion of regulation, a Jewish contribution to this multi-faith environmental conversation, that rules, in fact, are holy. We have zoning laws, pollution abatement, loss and damage. It's all in the Talmud. It's all in Torah. For us, the public good must prevail over the private good. Classic example from the 16th century, it summarized one person can do something at a distance, think marketplace, right? Decisions made in corporate boardrooms or factories, and it causes damage to their fellow somewhere else. It disturbs them, it disturbs the peace. That's a real damage. There's real liability. There must be redress. There must be reparation. That is the Torah approach. 6, human life, pikuach nefesh, saving a life is the single most important thing you can do. And here's another medieval response from one of the great rabbis of the 14th century. You may not gain a livelihood at the expense of another's health. Just think about how our 401k plans and their holdings would look different if that were, in fact, the law of the land. Number 7 seems an appropriate number for the idea of Shabbat and sabbatical, putting a higher notion out there than the realms of production and consumption. We can get better at the marginal carbon footprint of the next good or service, but everything in the world comes at some marginal environmental cost. What doesn't come at any marginal environmental cost is community and song and prayer and meditation and spiritual development and building that sensibility. This is the core teaching of Shabbat and sabbatical being the holiest times. They also guarantee an environmental ethic when you extend them across time. 8, it's not just humans. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher. And this again goes back to our classic text. You may not like flies, fleas, and gnats, snakes, scorpions, and spiders, but they have their place in the scheme of creation. God put it all there, or set the process in motion for this amazing, rich evolution tapestry for a reason. And as Maimonides, the greatest medieval thinker, says, don't go thinking that everything else exists for you. No, they exist for their own sake. They have standing, they have rights. And that's the core notion behind Noah as the first endangered species activist and work we need to do. Specifically for climate in the home stretch, the precautionary principle, beautiful line in Deuteronomy, build a new house, make a parapet for the roof. Don't bring blood guilt, lest someone fall. It doesn't say only a roof at less than 20-degree angle. It doesn't say only after empirical studies have shown that multiple children have fallen to injury. It says build the gosh darn parapet. Don't play fast and loose with people's lives. Don't go conducting uncontrolled science experiments with the one global climate we have. Where are the parapets? This is about the poor and disempowered. So it's a social justice issue. It's about creation and nature. It's an environmental issue, and it's about our descendants. It is a progeny issue. We don't know exactly what too late looks like. We know we're getting there. And that's the final theme, Ledor Vador, from generation to generation. We're bidden to choose life that we and our children may live, and the choices we make now affect that. So we are all in this together. That goes for the Jews, that's for people of faith, that's for humanity and all of creation. And this multi-faith creation care movement that we're a part of is amazing. This is the logo of our local one. This is your logo. Get to know, tap these resources, and connect. This is the Interfaith Power and Light Network, great examples from all over, Delaware in the center as well. And this is another interfaith umbrella, the National Religious Partnership for the Environment, with Catholic, Evangelical, Protestant, and Jewish under it. I'm involved with the Jewish one. And one fun last thing, Green Faith, another organization, gathered people 2 years ago. This is a group just before we risked arrest in standing up for the connection of the indigeneity and sustainability. And I've circled 4 of the faces because 2 of them are on this call, and the leaders of the 2 biggest Jewish environmental groups. On the far left is Yakir Manella of Adama, and on the far right is Rabbi Jenny Rosen of Dayenu. Those are tremendous follow-up resources. This is the interfaith world. This is just the Jewish ecosystem, Adama, Dayenu, Jewish Earth Alliance, Kojal, so many more, all worth tapping. Thank you for being part of it. Honored to be with you today.
Thanks so much, Fred. That was quite a tour de force. I want to let people know we're going to have a few minutes soon to digest that more fully with some smaller groups. But I want to first give our second speaker, Rabbi Ora Nitkin-Kaner, also some time to share. And just by word of introduction and background, you already heard that Rabbi Ora is the founder of Exploring Apocalypse. It's a climate change chaplaincy practice. I consider that already work that is so necessary and important, and I would say on the cutting edge of the work we need to be doing in the world as people of faith. And really the focus of the practice is helping people who are experiencing eco-anxiety and despair to move in with a deeper sense of ease and purpose as they engage with the work of climate change. Rabbi Nitkin-Kaner, she also leads workshops on climate change, on the moral injury of the climate crisis, and I have known her also as a pulpit rabbi. So she is talented in many different areas, but we're just grateful to have you here, Rabbi Ora, to share your Torah as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nathan and Fred and Katie and all of you. I'm really grateful to be here and able to share some of my Torah writ large. So I believe that the name of our hour together, this time together, is a Jewish approach to activism and accompaniment through the climate crisis. And as a chaplain, my focus is on accompaniment. So the name of my chaplaincy practice, Exploring Apocalypse, it's not based on eschatological visions of doom or gloom or worldwide destruction, but rather on the original meaning, as I think Katie mentioned, of apocalypse, to uncover or to reveal. A lot of us are noticing or experiencing an unraveling happening in our world, whether that's socially or politically or environmentally. And that means that what once felt more stable is now feeling increasingly unstable. And it's normal and it's human to respond to profound change by imagining a future in which our fears are realized. It's normal to be responding with a sense of overwhelm and with numbness and with a desire to sort of bury our heads in the sand when we think about the climate crisis. But my argument is that if we can give ourselves some space to get quiet and to get curious, we can start to ask the important question, what is being uncovered in this time? Or what is being revealed? And what are these changes revealing about who we are and who we need to be and become? And so from that space of gentle reflection, we can choose not just to react, but to respond to the invitations of change. So I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully this will work. Oops, okay, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Okay, wonderful. All right, so Susie Moser, who's an expert on climate change adaptation and communicating for social change, writes, "The time before was one in which we insisted and relied on hope, on better tomorrows, in the United States, on the American dream. Now we have to accept that better tomorrows may not come. It is akin to accepting one's own mortality. Coming to grips with the reality that we now are in takes time, and is critical that we give it a quiet space inside ourselves and that we ground ourselves in the face of it." So again, it's critical that we give it a quiet space inside ourselves and ground ourselves in the face of it. And this is really the work that we do in the climate change chaplaincy room and climate change chaplaincy space. So I'm actually going to metaphorically invite you into that chaplaincy Zoom room with me, because my work with clients is over Zoom. And I'm going to share some quotes from 3 clients of mine. A couple of them are Jewish, one is not Jewish. And I'm going to actually ask you to sort of put on your own chaplaincy hat and to try to answer the question with each client, what is the yearning that you're seeing? And what is this person reaching for? So the first client I want to introduce you to is a white male, cis male in his early 40s, raised Buddhist and Quaker. He says, "There's so much raw emotion. There's so much I could mourn in my own life and beyond. I'm trying to get in touch with it without running. I'm trying to be gentle with it." And he also says, "I have this feeling of dissonance. Climate change is a source of stress and distress on a daily basis, but we're not actually doing anything about it. And it's weird how slowly and how quickly it's happening at the same time." So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now, just briefly, popcorn style, and just name, what is the yearning that you're seeing here? What is this person reaching for?
I'm going to throw in, Ora, that I'm a yearning to grieve.
Yeah.
A desire for seeing some hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
A yearning to feel free to love.
Yeah. And Valerie in the chat is saying the sign that change might be pursued. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So moving on to the next client. So this is a cis woman in her late 60s who is Jewish. And she says, "I lose it when I read the news. I feel this churning rage and these feelings of how can this be? And what, are you kidding me? And why didn't I see this sooner? And I should have known this." And she also says, "I used to believe that if I brought kindness and caring into the world, that was enough. I don't feel that way anymore. I used to be sure of something. I'd like to be sure of something again." So what is the yearning or the reaching that you're noticing here?
Stability.
Say that again.
Stability.
Stability, yeah. Yeah.
Meaning.
Meaning.
What I do counts.
Yeah. And a feeling, and in the chat, I'm seeing a feeling of safety and a yearning for hope and safety. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
just trying to understand the changes and the breadth of the challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a desire for sort of a broader horizon of comprehension. All right, and I'm going to go to our last patient or client. So this is a young man, white, raised Jewish, whose wife is expecting their first child in the next few weeks, actually. And he says, "Will I have to teach my child to wear a mask outside? Will they be able to have a garden, go hiking in the woods? When I think rationally about what the world will look like as my kid grows up, it's daunting, it's scary, but I still have hope that there's a way to turn things around." So that final question, what are you seeing as the yearning?
Seems like the age-old, feeling of a parent, just wanting a better or a good life for their child or their children.
Yeah. Yeah, hope and searching.
Maybe a sense of how to parent in such an uncertain world.
Yeah. Yeah, and quite a number of my clients are actually folks who are thinking about having children, who themselves or whose partners are pregnant or have recently given birth. Yeah, looking for protection for the child. Beautiful. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. How am I doing on time, Nathan? Should I be wrapping up soon?
You could take another couple of minutes for sure, 2-3 minutes.
Okay. So I won't share the next slide that I was going to share, maybe a little bit of was a sort of theological grounding for some of my work. Maybe I'll share that a little bit later, but what I'll just say is that in my experience and in my belief that this is really sacred work, this work of accompaniment, not just for me and the privilege of being able to walk with folks through their despair, their yearning, their anxiety, their fear, their hope, their sense of possibility. But this is sacred work that my clients are doing, being able to root their yearning in their own sacred tradition and in their own sense of what is holy in the world, and the possibility of seeing a meaningful path forward, even if that path does not look like what they experienced in the past or what their parents, the life that their parents lived or their grandparents lived. Seeing the possibility of a meaningful path forward has value and is full of possibility. So I'm going to close there and I'll turn things back over to Nathan.
Great. Oh, that was just right. I just heard my alarm go off. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, so powerful to bring us in as chaplains alongside with you to witness these encounters. What I want to take a few minutes for people to do is get a chance to. That is a tremendous amount of information we've just taken in and absorbed. I want to give people a few minutes to be able to process it a bit. So what I'm going to suggest is, and I'm going to have Ranika help us out with this, is that we take a few minutes to break out in groups of, say, let's say 3 people, but it could be 3 or 4. That's fine. Renica, and the invitation is to just, first of all, say hello to your neighbor, whoever you end up in your breakout room with. Introduce yourselves if you don't know each other. Maybe just to each have person take just a minute or less just to share something that struck you from these two presentations. You know, something you want to kind of lift up a bit. And if there's a question or curiosity you might have that you might want to ask about either Rabbi Fred or Rabbi Ora, you know, as a follow-up. And sometimes it can help to sort of organize our thinking that way before just jumping into the next piece. So Renica, I'm going to have you send people off. Let's take 4 minutes because we're running a little behind, I think, on time. But give a little bit of a time, like another 30 seconds to. Well, actually, let's take a tight 5, without a lot of lag to get us back here. If you feel like you're done in your group early, you can always come back to the main room, and do a little go around, and then once we come back, we'll start to gather some questions for a Q&A. Does that make sense, everyone? Great. Okay. Great. And Renica, we're going to have our speakers stay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm sure that was too short of a breakout room time to really unpack everything that you heard, but hopefully it was a chance to get your mind going. I want to invite people, if you did have a particular question or curiosity or something you were interested in knowing more about from either one of our two speakers, to share that question in the chat, and I will be pulling all of those questions together in a few minutes. While that's happening, I'm going to start us off though with a question that's been I've been holding around this, which is as Jews, I don't want to speak for all Jews. As a particular Jewish rabbi, I'm not always one who's theologically oriented in my approach to Jewish life, but I think wrestling with theology sometimes can be important and helpful. So I've noticed that my theology has shifted from one that we sort of saw echoed a little bit in some of the comments that Ora shared, Rabbi Ora shared, that it's one shifted away from sort of a strong hope that if we each contribute together, we can build the sanctuary, to one more about inviting God to accompany us in the brokenness. And I'm just wanted to put out the question to our two speakers about, have you noticed any change or evolution, or where does your theology land a bit as you do this work in the world? I'm going to start with Ora this time, and then we'll send it over to you after that, Fred.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, so I think similarly to you, I have been finding a lot of meaning in this idea of a God who is close to us when we are suffering, when our hearts are breaking, maybe even a God who weeps alongside us as we weep. And beyond just this sense of shared suffering between human and the divine, beyond just this kind of accompaniment or walking alongside, I've also been finding some meaning in the idea that when we speak the truth of this moment and the truth of our hearts, that brings this additional aspect or level of the sacred. So I'm thinking about Psalm 145, which in the Jewish world is known as Ashrei, and some Jews will recite it 3 times daily. And there's this beautiful line in Ashrei that says, Karov Adonai lechol korav, lechol asher yikreuhu ve'emet, which is translated as God is close to all who cry out, to all who call out to God in truth, emet. So there's this sense that God, as we're crying out, specifically draws close to us to hear us speak truth, to hear us speak the truth of the moment. So that's when we speak truth to power, when we speak truth to each other about what our hearts are holding, which means that there's holiness and in the bravery of seeing and naming the truth of this moment, holiness in naming what is true, what's actually happening, rather than, like I was saying before, ostriching our heads in the sand. And there's also, that means there's holiness, not just in imagining dystopia and in speaking our, worst fears for the future, but also in speaking utopia, in offering radical visions for what we can build together. And I will turn it over to Fred.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Traditional Jewish theology kind of takes 3 archetypal moments and turns them into categories. So creation comes first, and we are in the image of God, creators. Revelation, the Mount Sinai moment, if you will, and quickly kind of backwards, but redemption, the crossing of the Red Sea being the classic example, but this move from pushed downedness to a place of expansiveness, and we call that freedom with responsibility. So in Jewish terms, and I've tracked this, the early literature in the 70s, 80s, 90s Jewish environmental was very much about the Mount Sinai model. Let's mine our sacred texts and figure out what in the revelation is there that will help goad and guide us in this moment. Then we moved to creation, and what can we actually learn? Like Ecclesiastes, go to the ant and learn, follow the wisdom of what's out there. And with that, I would introduce the idea of a naturalistic metaphors. Sally McFaig did this work in the 80s. There's a new Jewish book by our colleague Rabbi Toba Spitzer called God is Here, a series of naturalistic metaphors, God as water, God as cloud, God as rock, which get beyond all of the gender issues, all the hierarchy issues, and surface the idea of a divine energy that we can relate to in a different way. And then the newer frontier is redemption, the need to be the bringers of redemption today in a distinctly broken world. And we're not going to get there without working on ourselves and holding the grief, all the work that Rabbi Ora is speaking of. And we're also not going to get there any one of our traditions alone. And that's the power of this kind of learning and sharing and organizing, because no one tradition, no one approach is going to solve the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. We need each other, and we need each other's resources and traditions.
Thank you, Ora and Fred. Very, very helpful. I'm going to share a few questions I've just been seeing from the chat. And so far they're all good, but maybe we'll start with this question about, there was a question by Bill Cousins about how do you, it's directed you, Rabbi Ora, but probably to either of you, how do you get the strength to support people in grief and loss? What nourishes you to be able to do that work? And I would echo for Fred, it's the same kind of question.
Yeah, I want to hear from Fred too, and actually from all of you. Unfortunately, if only we could stay on for another 5 hours. Practically speaking, I do what we are all, what we're all prescribed to do. So I do therapy. I spend time with loved ones. I cuddle with my dog. I go for walks in the woods. all the things that as human beings living through this time, we're supposed to do in the name of self-care, and what will allow us to care for others at the same time. Theologically, I will say, and I'll just share my screen, let me see. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, great. So I think what keeps me rooted in this work is a sense of possibility, not in spite of everything that's happening, but within all that's unraveling. So the possibility for joy in the face of uncertainty, and for the experience of closeness despite possibilities or maybe inevitabilities of loss, and the opportunities to make meaning in this time. So very quickly, this is a midrash, a sort of Jewish fan fiction about Amram, the father of Moses, responding to Pharaoh's decree that every Israelite male born shall be cast into the river. And Amram says, we're laboring for nothing by bringing children into this world to be killed. And so he divorces his wife, and all the other Jewish men in his community also divorce their wives so that they don't give birth to any more children. And then Miriam, the prophetess, who's such a, excuse my language, badass, she says to her father, Father, your decree is harsher than that of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's decree will only cause our male children to die, but you're decreeing death for males and females. And who knows whether his decree will be fulfilled, but yours certainly will be, because you're a righteous and respected person of your generation. And so Amram accepts his daughter's words, and he remarries his wife, and everyone else in his community does the same. So I think this sense of hope, which is really a sense of possibility, possibility and curiosity, keeps me rooted and sustains me. And Fred, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Amen to all of that. And hi, Bill. I would just add community as a source of support, and that is both the micro community of a worshiping congregation or a circle of friends, but it's also the macro community that includes these couple of Zoom screens of folks who may not know each other, but are in common bonds of concern and compassion. The other is a regimen of self-improvement. In Judaism, it's called musar, kind of developing our own virtues one by one so that we're more prone to do the right thing. You can slowly, haltingly chart your own progress if you take this seriously. It's actually rooted in something Ben Franklin wrote, got translated into Yiddish, and then Hebrew, and then English. But this idea of developing ourselves, that it's never too late to make progress. We're not going to get to perfection, but that's a theological observation, right? But we also are going to improve if we set our minds to it and tap the resources that include each other. And that gives hope, and that enables me to have the strength to hold the people who are feeling less hope at the moment.
Thank you. I love this question by Mark, who says, how much energy should we put towards convincing those who don't believe climate change is real? It's sort of an organizing question in a way. But we do live in a world that feels often very bifurcated. How do you deal with, writ large, those bifurcations? Maybe I'll start with Fred on this one.
I think you or Katie would be able to give great answers to this also. The short version, there's a lot of data in climate change communications. The Yale Center is a great resource, and they've tracked and shown that we've hit, there's been an uptick, unfortunately, in this polarization moment, but we've hit record lows of the out and out deniers, that it's something like 10%. Right. And so more than half of Americans claim to be either alarmed or concerned, the two most dire of 6 categories. We're already at a majority. And if they voted accordingly, we'd get there. Similarly, a majority of Americans claim to be part of a faith tradition that has creation care and concern for the least of these among us at their core. And if we get people to vote and live and purchase and consume their values, as stated and as prayed, we would also get there. That's the promise to me of the IPL model of organizing. So I would say, don't worry too much about changing the doggedly dismissive, but figure out what's going to sway the center, what's going to take a skeptic and bring them along to this journey of greater awareness and ultimately responsibility.
Thank you. So this next question sort of taps into the one that Helga shared, and I'm going to kind of reframe it a bit. This is, forgive me for some of the generalizations, but it seems like some of the work that Ora is talking about is how do we reframe our experience and potentially our lifestyle to meet the new moment. How do we do sort of, but in particular, how do we do, what's the inner work we need to do, whether it's about holding grief and loss, holding possibility, that will allow us to meet the world where it is. So it feels like that's one trajectory of our work as Jews and as human beings at this moment. And then there's this this other piece that Fred, that you particularly lifted up of the palace is burning. We need to douse the water right now. How do we? How can we not go out in the world and do what we need to do to create change and do it yesterday? So not that this is necessarily an either or, but I am just curious about how you each hold and wrestle with spiritual work and inner work versus the work we need to be doing in the world, and how do you make sense of that for yourselves? I forget who started last time, but if someone feels moved to jump in first.
I can jump in just because I do want to tack on one additional really interesting fact that sort of floored and fascinated me when I learned it to Fred's last response, and then I'll speak to the most recent question. So studies show that the average American thinks that they care more about climate change than the average American. So I think that's really fascinating. We have to ask ourselves the question, why is that? And what can we do with that fact? And so to address your question, Nathan, I think that essentially we're all young children, like at our core, we're all little kids when it comes to the profound changes that we're experiencing and facing, by which I mean we're scared and we're confused and we want the comfort of clear guidance, and we want a solution that will alleviate having to sit in the profound uncertainty of climate change. So we want someone to say to us, do this thing, don't do that thing, and things will get better. And I don't think we're going to get that clarity because our world is complex and the situation is complex. And so I think that it's valuable for us to understand and really get in our kishkas, in our guts, that there are many different avenues to meaningful engagement with the climate crisis, and every single one of them is necessary and important. So whether we do the inner spiritual or emotional work, whether we come together in community to learn or to plan or to advocate or to build down or to tear up or to dream, every single one of these paths is meaningful and valuable.
Thank you.
I would only add that the process of behavior change, especially on something as big as this, is going to require internal fortification, stick-to-itiveness, right? So partly that regimen of self-improvement is a piece of it to sustain ourselves so that we can do the work, and just holding lightly, like not demanding perfection, but having the goal in mind. And the goal in the realm of religion is, think about the very word sacred, right? It's the same root as sacrifice. So we do have to give up. We have a standard of living that is not sustainable in upper middle class America, 21st century. It is not sustainable even for the 8 billion on the planet now if they all lived that way, much less a future. But so we're not going to get very far by saying, give up your standard of living and shiver through the winter, right? The Jimmy Carter model of turn down your thermostat and wear a cardigan. But he was right. And so we need to hold on to what is holy and remember that in a sacrifice, it is not primarily what you give up. It is actually an investment of what you get in return, which is immeasurably holy. And that includes a stable world for our great-grandchildren. What wouldn't we invest in that? Got to keep our eyes on the prize.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you both. We could, I know, do this all afternoon. I'm so appreciating your thoughtful and reflective responses. I know we're going to be close to wrapping up. I just want to say this is a conversation that's going to continue, hopefully, beyond today. And I'm grateful for PAIPL and for Katie for convening this, and hopefully the first of many more to come. Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few words.
Thank you to all three of you. I hope that you found a lot of value in today's conversation. I've seen a lot of nodding heads and just really appreciative of your engagement. I'm really sitting with two themes that I think I heard a lot come up in today's presentation, like these concepts or values or ideas of how we connect to each other, how we live in relationship together, and then also the invitation to remain curious. And I think that is the heart behind this whole conversational series that PIPL is hosting in community with others, is really to ask, how do we stay curious, and what might we learn when we do? So if you've enjoyed today's conversation, I know we have some returns from last time, so thank you so much for joining us again in this space. And we will continue to have this conversation again next month. So Thursday, December 7th, we will take a dive into the Islamic tradition and explore that tradition and the wisdoms that it might hold for us in our current contexts and modern lives. So we don't have a registration link for you yet today, but I invite you to kind of hold the time and day on your calendar, noon, on Thursday, December 7th. And hopefully if you're in this room, we have your email, so you'll hear from us in a follow-up email, and you'll also get the link to register for that program. In addition to that, if you are a person that enjoys gathering in interfaith community, you're definitely going to want to join us this Sunday if you're available. We have our annual conference. We have 5 locations across the state: Philadelphia, Scranton, Lancaster State College, and Pittsburgh. We'll have a wonderful keynote speaker, Sharon Levine, who's been a leader in the movement away from fossil fuels and is a person of deep faith. She'll be speaking. We have 20 workshops planned throughout the day at different locations. And so whether you can join us virtually just for the keynote or in person at one of those workshops, we would love to see you. And Reinika will make sure that the link is there to register. As part of the conference this year, we're also offering an exclusive screening of The Oil Machine, which is it's all the way from the UK, and it's on tour here this fall with the filmmaker. So we'll be having a live in-person conversation with her in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, if you're here in the local area. But if not, please join us for the virtual screening that's happening the day before the conference, which is Saturday, November 4th at 6 p.m. All of those details will be in the chat, and we would love to see you to continue figuring out how we hold and build interfaith community together in this critical season and time that we find ourselves living in. So thank you from all of the team at PIPL. We're very, very glad that you came and joined us today. And so I'm going to invite Rabbi Nathan to close us out.
I just want to offer a closing prayer. And it's a tradition in Judaism and others traditions as well to close all our services with a prayer for peace. Also to close Torah study with a prayer for peace. So this has felt both like sacred work and sacred learning together. So I want to invite people in the chat to obviously take a moment if you want to share who you're lifting up in your prayers for peace at this moment, to feel free to do that. We obviously are holding a lot of conflict in the world at this time. And I just want, while you're doing that, to share these words from our tradition for peace as well. May it be your will, Eternal One, God of our ancestors, that wars and bloodshed be abolished from the world, and bring the world into a great and wonderful and lasting peace. And let no nation lift sword against nation. Let them learn no more the ways of war. Let all who dwell on earth simply acknowledge the truth of truths. We have not come into the world for the sake of quarreling and war, hatred, jealousy, anger, bloodshed. Rather, we have come in this world only to know you. May you be blessed eternally. Therefore, have mercy on us and fulfill among us what is written in your scripture, in your Torah. I shall give peace upon the earth. You shall lie down with none to make you afraid. I shall abolish from the earth the predatory beast. The sword shall never come upon your land. Justice shall roll down like the waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the omnipresent as the water fills the seas. We say Amen. Just want to acknowledge all of those who, as well, shared in the chat. Prayers for all those who are needing peace at this time as well. Thank you for doing that. So good to be with you all. May you go forth and take in what we've done and keep the conversation going as well. Go forth in strength.